Namaste, good evening, and welcome to the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston and our class on the Mundaka Upanishad. Om Namo Brahma Dibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartrubhyo Vamsharshibhyo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhyaha Om Shanti 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 Narayanam Padma Bhuvam Vasishtam Shaktim cha Tatputra Parasharam cha Vyasam Sukham Gaudapadam Mohantam Govinda Yogindra Mathasya Shishyam Shri Shankaracharya Mathasya Padma Padam cha Hasta Malakam cha Shishyam Tantotakam Vartikakara Manyan Asmadgurun Santatamanathosmi Om Shanti 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 Om Bhadrang Karne Vishnuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashye Makshabhirya Jatraha Sthirairangai Istuštuvagum Sastanobhihi Vyashema Devahitayadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vridhashravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastarksho arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatir dadhatu Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. We salute that long lineage of spiritual teachers, beginning from the divine being itself, who revealed this supreme knowledge to the Creator, Brahma, who in turn revealed it to the first created sages, who in their turn passed it in a continuous line of succession from guru to disciple down to the present day. To all of those spiritual teachers, our profound salutations. Om, O ye gods, may we hear auspicious words with our ears. Engaged in sacrifice, may we see auspicious things with the eyes. While praising the gods with steady limbs, may we enjoy a life that is beneficial to the gods. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So this evening we'll continue our study of the Mundaka Upanishad, where we left off last time. Last time we had just begun the second Mundaka, that is the second part. So the Mundaka Upanishad is the only Upanishad where the parts are called Mundakas. It's divided the same way that the Katha Upanishad is divided into, the Katha Upanishad is divided into three parts with two chapters each. And so this also 3 parts with 2 chapters each, but only in the Mundaka are the parts called Mundakas for obvious reason, because of the name of the Upanishad. So last time, the first verse of the first chapter of the second Mundaka, it said that this is the truth, as taretat satyam. As from a blazing fire, thousands of sparks, similar to it in nature, issue forth. So, O my young friend, manifold beings are produced from the imperishable, and they verily go back to it again. So this verse speaks of the nature of creation. Remember that in the first chapter, the 6th or 7th verse, I think it was the 7th, first Mundaka, first chapter, verse 7, that yatornanabhi srujate gruhnate cha, that is, as the spider emits and withdraws the web, as herbs sprout on the earth, plants sprout on the earth, as hair grows on the head and body of a man without any effort, so from the imperishable being this universe springs out. So the Upanishad tells that the universe itself has come from the divine being. So I want to dwell on that for a long time, because I did when we went over verse 7, and again last time when we went over the first verse of the first chapter of the second Mundaka. But the important idea here is that out of the imperishable being, this universe of appearance has come. This universe of perishable things has come from that. And so, as I explained last time, and previously when we were on the first chapter, the importance of this is to know that if everything here has come out of the supreme reality, it is made of that supreme reality. That it's the supreme reality which appears as the perishable. It's the imperishable being which appears as the perishable. This is an extremely important idea in the Vedanta, and in all phases of Vedanta, whether dualistic, qualified, monistic, or non-dualistic, that this universe is the divine being itself, that the universe hasn't come out of nothing, because nothing comes out of nothing. Nothing doesn't exist, and so how can something come out of nothing when there is no such thing as nothing? Nothing is an abstract concept we have, which actually doesn't refer to, obviously, anything. If it's no thing, it can't refer to anything. And so nothing is nothing. There is no nothing. So you don't get anything out of that. So this universe has come out of the supreme reality, and that's one of it's not only a distinction from the Abrahamic traditions, especially Christianity, which says that the universe has been created out of nothing, but it also distinguishes Vedanta from Buddhism, because in Buddhism, the idea is that well, first of all, they don't believe in a reality. They don't believe in the soul. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in a universal soul, a universal reality. They don't believe in being. They just believe that there is appearance. And appearance, if you know that appearance is just appearance, then you attain nirvana, because you know that there is nothing substantial. And so it's not that you realize the substantial, because they say that the idea that there is a substance, a reality, a being, that's the primordial illusion, to think that there is something to hold on to. And so they say that nirvana is understanding that everything is insubstantial, everything is momentary, including my own being. There's nothing to hold on to. And so then you attain perfect non-attachment, and you rest in the state of enlightenment. But even the state of enlightenment is not a thing. So they have the strange idea in the philosophical aspects of Buddhism that nirvana changes every moment. Because Buddha said, sarvam kshanikam kshanikam. Everything is momentary. Everything is coming and going every moment. And so Buddha didn't say everything except nirvana. He said everything is kshanikam kshanikam. And so you realize that, and that is nirvana. But then nirvana must be kshanikam kshanikam also. So it's a very strange idea from a Vedantic perspective. I can understand, we can understand the Buddhist idea from a Vedantic perspective. But from the Buddhistic perspective, it's a peculiar idea. And certainly the idea that nirvana, the state of enlightenment, is changing every moment. And what kind of enlightenment is that? So again, the distinction between this idea expressed in this verse and previous verses, this first verse that we went over last time, and previous verses, that everything here is an appearance of reality itself. So you find in traditions like Zen Buddhism, which is very close to Vedanta. It's the tradition in Buddhism which is closest in many ways to the non-dualistic Vedanta. But they speak of words distorting the reality. Vedanta agrees. It says, yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha in the Taittiriya Upanishad. Yato vacho nivartante, that from which Speech returns, aprapya manasasaha, not having attained to the reality, and it returns with the mind. So speech tries to express the highest truth, but it can't. It returns. It can't attain to the highest truth because speech is dualistic. It can't attain to it can't express, it can't really speak in truth about. It has no place in the highest truth. So Vedanta agrees that speech distorts the truth. But where Vedanta differs is that, as Shankaracharya says in his Prata Smarana Stotra, his early morning hymn of 3 verses, each verse begins Prata in the morning. So Pratar bhajami manaso vachasam agamyam. At dawn, I remember that truth which is beyond the reach of speech and mind. Agamyam vacho nibhanti nikila tadanugrahena. But by whose grace all speech is made manifest. And so speech itself, it can't reach back to the ultimate, but speech has come from the ultimate. And so speech, words are an attempt to express the ultimate, all words. And according to Sanskrit grammar, all words are trying to express the ultimate truth. They can't reach it, and yet they point to it because there's still a connection. Everything here, all of the changing things here, they are not the ultimate reality. It's not that Brahman is a chair, or Brahman is a rock, Brahman is a plant, Brahman is a human being. No, nothing here is Brahman visible. Everything here is limited, Brahman is unlimited. And yet, everything here is a manifestation, an appearance of Brahman. And so there's a connection between everything here and reality. That's why everything here has the potential for being a symbol of reality. That's why there's so many deities in Hinduism. There's so many sacred plants. There's sacred minerals. The sun, the moon are sacred. The cow is sacred because anything can be used as a symbol for the reality because everything is a manifestation of the reality. So if we can see the connection between a manifest object and the divine, we can use it as a symbol for worship. We don't worship chairs because we don't see a connection between the chair and Brahman. But if someone were able to see how the chair is a direct symbol of Brahman, then you could worship a chair. There's nothing wrong with it. We don't only because it doesn't show a clear indication that by looking at a chair, we're not reminded of Brahman. We're reminded of a chair, a place to sit. But a cow, because of its maternal nature and its giving nature, its nourishing nature, then there's a natural connection between the cow and the divine being. And so if you see that, then you can worship the cow. There's no harm in it. So again, that is a fundamental distinguishing characteristic of Hinduism. We can understand from the standpoint of Vedanta the ideas of the Buddhism, of the Abrahamic traditions, etc. But we also see that there is that the reality itself is manifesting as this universe. So everything here is filled with that reality. As Sri Krishna says in the Gita, in the 9th chapter, is the 8th or 9th chapter? I forget now. It's either the 8th or 9th chapter. It's the 9th, the beginning of the 9th chapter. He says that I am in all beings, and yet I'm not within all beings. All beings are within me, and yet they're not within me. Meaning that Krishna as reality, as Brahman, not Krishna as the incarnation, but Krishna as Brahman, is uncontainable by anything, limitless. How can he be contained by anything? So he's not within anything in that sense because nothing can contain the limitless. No limitation can contain, and yet he is within all beings. All beings are within him, and yet when you get to Brahman, you find that there's nothing within Brahman. There's just reality. And so nothing is within Brahman, and yet everything is within Brahman. Brahman is within everything, and yet Brahman is within nothing. And so that paradox is what is expressed by Sri Krishna at the beginning of the ninth chapter. Here, one side of that is being shown, and that is that everything here has come out of the reality, and it is a manifestation of that reality. So, as it said in that first verse, this is the truth as from a blazing fire, thousands of sparks, similar to it in nature, issue forth. So this universe has come out of that being. So just as a spark is fire, it is fire, and yet it's a tiny bit of the fire, but it is sarupa. They are sarupa. They are of the same nature, and so everything here is a spark of that infinite reality. So again, everything here has the power to manifest Brahman. Every word, if we meditate on it properly, every word could be mantra. There are special mantras that we use for meditation, which are especially powered because they are, the sound itself of the mantra is directly connected to a particular aspect of deity, of divinity. And so we recite particular mantras, particular sounds, which have an intrinsic connection to the reality. And they have no other significance, just that connection. But every word, whether in English or Swahili or Japanese or Sanskrit, every word is a direct manifestation of the infinite reality. And so any word, if we meditated on it, could take us back to the reality if we meditated properly on it. It's just that the mantra is specially empowered to do so. So now the rest of this chapter we will finish tonight. There are a number of verses here, but they're developing one idea, and they're developing it in a poetic way, a beautiful way for those who understand the ideas behind it, but in a way which is not immediately practicable by people in modern times, because it's referring largely to the Vedic way of seeing things, which even in India, people are not trained to see things in that way. Classical Hinduism took the place of this Vedic vision. So classical Hinduism is rooted in the Vedas, but it began to speak of reality in a different way from the Vedic symbolism. So the symbolism has been lost. The content of the symbols have not been lost in modern Hinduism. So I'll go through these a little differently from the way I usually go through each verse, very slowly. There'll be parts where I'll explain more, but we probably will get through this whole chapter tonight. So verse 2 of this chapter says, let me come to it here. Divyo hyamurta purusha sabahya abhyantaro hyajaha aprano hyamana shubhro hyaksharat parata paraha. So this says that that reality, that being out of which all of this has come like sparks, it is divya. This verse is more clear than the others, which are more symbolic. But that reality is divya, that is, it's resplendent, from div, the root div, which means to shine. So that reality is resplendent. And divya, of course, is also a cognate of the Latin word which becomes in English divine. So divine and divya are linguistically, historically related. They come from the same root. So that reality is resplendent. Amurta, it's formless. So everything that we see here is form. Even when we think of the formless, we think of the formless in symbolic terms, which means we think of the formless in formful terms. So when we think of the formless, that you say that God is formless, we think of light, which is spreading out, or we think of the air or the sky. But the sky is something where we have a conception. It's a spatial object that we think of. It goes from here to there and here to there, so it's space itself is a symbol. It's an object. It's a symbolic object. And so the actual formless, we don't really know what the formless means until we realize it, because When we think of formless, we think of something within space. We can't do otherwise. The mind cannot conceive of anything except within space. So this is the real formless. It's self-resplendent, it's formless. Aja, it's unoriginated, it's not born. It is eternal. Everything here is born. Planets are born, solar systems are born, galaxies are born. The universe itself is born, and every object within the universe is born. And yet that has no origin. Shubhra, it's pure, untouched by anything, undefiled by anything, unmixed with anything. Pure means that which doesn't have anything inside of it which is not it. Pure milk is just milk. Pure water is just water. And so that is pure. There's nothing there but divinity, nothing there but reality. This Purusha, it's called Purusha. Those of you who are from India know the word Purusha because it's Purusha's man in Sanskritic languages and in Sanskrit. But the origin of Purusha is either that which is pervasive, Purusha, like Purana, from the same root as Purana, or that which dwells within the city of 9 gates, Puri, within the city, within the body. So this Purusha is called the Purusha because he's all-pervading being, the full being, the complete being. Sabahya Bhyantara is both within and without. That reality is inside and without. When I look inside and think of myself, I see the Atman. Of course, when I say that, I mean I should see the Atman. When I look within, I see the Atman, the reality. When I look outside, I see Brahman, the reality outside of me, and realize that that which is within is that which is without. There's no distinction between Atman and Brahman. They're the same. So Sabahya Bhyantara, both within and without. It's the same reality. He indeed a prana, without prana, before the emergence of life itself, before the emergence of energy. There's a popular conception nowadays in New Age religion that God is energy. Oh no, God is not energy. Even Shakti, the creative power, is not power as we conceive of it. So prana, the life force, or the energy we see working within the universe, because prana means both. Life force is a particular manifestation of prana. So prana means the life force, that which makes living beings living. It also means just energy. So the reality is prior to prana. Prana is a manifestation of that. Amanaha, prior to mind. There's no mind there. When you get to Brahman, it's not the Brahman is sitting there thinking about different things. No, there's no mind. There's no conception. There's no thought. So it's prior to mind. Mind itself is a degeneration of Brahman. It's not that Brahman is thoughtless in the degenerate sense. It's thoughtless in the sense that there's no need for mind. There's no need for thinking. There's the immediacy of reality. Aksharat parataha. Beyond the manifest, or not the manifest, but the imperishable of nature, beyond the change, the imperishable prakriti or nature out of which all of this universe has come, that is eternal in the sense that it endures forever through cycle and kalpa after kalpa of creation and destruction, Prakriti comes into manifestation and goes back into a seed state, comes into manifestation, goes back into a seed state, eternally. And so it is akshara, that is, it's imperishable. But this is aksharat parataha, it's beyond that imperishable. Brahman is imperishable, but not in the sense of time. Prakriti is imperishable, it exists through all time. But it is time that is the associate of Prakriti, or part of the nature of Prakriti. But this imperishable, Brahman, is beyond even nature. And it is paraha, that is, it's transcendental. It's completely transcendental. And then the next verse, verse 3, says, Etasmaat jayate prano manah sarvendriyani cha kam vayur jyotirapa prithvi vishwasya dharini. And so here we come to Vedic cosmology, which has continued down into through the Hindu tradition. From etasmat jayate prana, from that infinite reality has come the life force, prana. Mana has come the mind. So prana has come, the mind has come, sarvendriyani cha, and all of the sense organs have come. So here's talking from the standpoint of a living being. So out of that reality, each of us who are manifestations of life force, prana, we're manifestations of mind, we're manifestations of the indriyas, the sense organs. And so that life force, that mind, all of the sense organs have come out of that. Kam vayur jyoti rapa prithvi vishwasya dharini. And from out of that reality has come the five elements. Kam, which is space, Vayu, which is wind, Jyoti, which is also Agni. Here, Jyoti means light, but it refers to fire, the third. Apa, the waters. Waters in Sanskrit is plural. At least this word used for water is waters, the apa. And Prithvi, earth. Vishwasya dharini, which is the support of this universe. Earth is called the support of the universe because it is what gives solidity to the universe, what gives manifestation its sense of permanence is the quality of earth. So the five elements of Sanskrit or of Hindu cosmology and Vedic cosmology are mentioned in this Upanishad. You find this is a very old Upanishad, but older yet is the Chandogya Upanishad, which you can tell by the language and the ideas. And so in the Chandogya Upanishad, there was still sometimes the idea that there were only three elements. And sometimes it says, out of water, everything has come out of water. And so similar to the growth of philosophy in ancient Greece, which came later, you find the philosophers trying to think of what was the first element, what was that which first everything has come out of. And some said water, some said fire. So in the Chandogya Upanishad, you find these thoughts being developed. But by this time, still in the Vedic period, they had come to the understanding that there were five elements. Modern people, whether in India or outside, those who study Hindu cosmology tend to think that, well, this is just primitive thought. Like in ancient Greece, they thought there were four elements. The Buddhists thought there were four elements, though the Tibetan Buddhists, their Buddhism came from India at a late period when Buddhism in India was becoming more and more Vedantic. The Tibetans say there are five elements. They include space. But the ancient Greeks and the mainstream Buddhists, or shouldn't say mainstream, Tibetans are mainstream Buddhists, but later, but early Buddhism, there were four elements. All of these elements except for space. They had wind, fire, water, and earth. But by this time in the Upanishads, they said, no, there are five elements. Why? Was it just primitive cosmology? They didn't have modern science, they didn't have chemists, they didn't have chemical engineers, they didn't have people who went to college and understood the correct way of looking at the universe, so they imagined that they had these five elements. No, it was based on direct experience. There's a profound idea behind it. They were looking at the universe from a different perspective from the modern chemist. The chemist takes visible matter and analyzes it and breaks it into the atomic level, where you have a certain number of natural elements and then some heavier man-made elements, starting with hydrogen and the helium, etc., in the periodic table of elements. Those all belong to Earth, the last and the fifth element of Hindu cosmology. So what was the idea of the five elements? The five elements, each element pertains to one sense organ. What do I experience? What do I experience? I experience the visual sense, everything that I see. What else do I experience? I experience everything that I hear. What else do I experience? Everything that I smell. What else do I experience? Everything that I taste. What else do I experience? Everything that I feel through the tactile sense. The tactile sense. I don't know anything else except for ideas based on that experience. Even with modern scientific instrumentation, all it does is that, and I say all, it does a lot, but all that a lot is that modern scientific instrumentation does is extend the power of the five senses so that I can see what I can't see with my eye. I can hear what I can't hear with my ear naturally. I can smell, I can taste, I can touch that which I can't taste, smell, or touch with my sense organs. It expands the power of the five senses. That's all that instrumentation can do. Everything that I experience of the world, I experience through these five senses. And the strange thing is that what we see is so different from what we hear. Hearing is so different from seeing. Seeing is so different from smelling. Smelling is related to, experientially related to, but still distinct from tasting. And those two are so different from touching, what we experience through touch. These five ways of experiencing the world, they're so different from each other. And so the kam, or vyoma, space, which is the first element out of which the other elements are conceived to have come. That is the element associated with the sense of sound. Sound and sight are the two senses that give us a sense of depth perception. Touch also, but touch has to be right next to the body, something that we actually physically contact. But through the sense of sight and through the hearing, we have a sense of depth perception, three-dimensional perception. And so hearing was considered to be associated with space. So even if you go blind, you still can tell direction by hearing sounds. Oh, the sound is coming from there, that sound's coming from over there, that sound's coming from over there. And so that was one way of experiencing, was through space. Second, vayu, wind, that is a symbol for all that we contact with the sense of touch. Touch is the wind element. Agni, or Jyoti as it is here, the same thing, fire, is the visual sense. And then apa, waters, that is the sense of taste. And prithvi, earth, that is the sense of smell. And so you have the five senses in these five. So earth is a symbolic representation of everything that we smell. So we smell odors. And so the principle of odor is earth. We taste tastes. There are different types of tastes, yes, but we recognize all of them to be taste: sour, sweet, pungent, salty, etc. All of them are different types of taste. And so the element of water is the foundation for the very sense of taste. All that we taste is a different manifestation, variations within the sense, within the water element. All that we see nothing but light. We see color, which is nothing but an interpretation of wavelengths of light. So we see nothing but light. You can't see something which is not light. You can see the absence of light, and you can see light. That's all that you can see. So both pertain to light. And so fire is the name of the principle of sight, the principle that which causes sight, which is light. And then vayu, wind, is that which we touch. Everything that we touch is symbolized by wind. And then again, hearing is the space. So space represents the element of the substratum of all sounds. We hear all kinds of different sounds, but we recognize them all as sounds. And all of them are manifestations, variations, vibrations within the element of space. So here it says that, again, from that infinite being is born life, mind, the senses, ether. Space is a better term now that most modern scientists don't speak in terms of ether. Though there are some theoretical physicists now who claim that the idea of ether, which we thought was put to rest by Einstein, that it should not be, it should be revived, that there is, that ether should be a part of physics also. So that's debatable. But ether nowadays, because of the majority opinion that there's no such thing as ether, akasha should be space. It doesn't matter if they find that ether does exist, then that is ether as it was conceived is the stuff of space, that which makes space. And so whether we call it space or ether doesn't matter to us. So from him are born life, mind, the senses, and all of the 5 elements, including earth, which is the support of all. So then we come to verse 4. So again, this is the cosmology. This is saying how all of this that we see, how it came to be, and the order of progression. The opposite of the, not opposite in detail, but opposite in principle from the modern scientific idea. The scientific idea is that you start with matter. And matter is started in a primordial sense, a primordial soup before the Big Bang. They don't even they don't know what that state was, but from the moment of the Big Bang, they theorize various things of how matter differentiates itself and expands and so forth. But science begins from matter and says that out of matter you get a particular organization of matter, a complex organization of matter, which suddenly produces life. And then life begins to expand itself, begins to evolve in more and more complex forms, until suddenly you get such a complex form of living matter, that consciousness appears. It comes out of matter. So life comes out of matter, then suddenly consciousness appears out of matter, and that goes on complexifying until you get human beings. But it all comes out of matter. So the Vedic and Vedantic cosmology is quite different. It says, no, everything has come from the divine being. And it comes first into mind and prana, and then into the sense organs, and then into the external world. So then we come to verse 4, which says, Tasmād-agni samidho yasya surya somāt parjanya oshadhaya prithivyam pumanre tasintati yoshitayam bahvi praja purushat samprasutaha. Oh, I skipped one? Oh, I skipped 4. Okay, yes, you're right. Thank you. So 4 says, Agnir murdha chakshushi chandra suryo disha shrotre egvag vivrataascha velaha vayu prano hridayam vishwasya padbhyam prithivi hyesha su sarva bhutantaratma. So 4 says that verily he is the indwelling spirit within all. Sarva bhutantaratma. He is the sarva bhutantaratma, the spirit, the atma, the self which dwells within all, the same self dwelling within all. And of course the Upanishads come to the conclusion that I, the I of each one of us, I am that sarva bhutantaratma. I am that reality dwelling within the hearts of all. So it's not that dwells within the hearts of all and we disappear, and that remains good for it, bad for us, because we've disappeared. But no, we are that reality. So verily he is the indwelling spirit within all. Fire is his head. So here fire represents again, these symbols were highly developed in the Vedic times, and then with classical Hinduism, a different symbology arose. So here, the fire, which was so important in the Vedic religion, the fire is the first fire, which is the heavenly fire. It symbolizes heaven, because through the earthly fire we attain to heaven. And so, verily, he is the indwelling spirit within all. Fire is his head. So it means that the heavens are his head. The sun and his moon, the sun and the moon are his eyes. The sun is again, it's a poetical expression that the sun and the moon are the eyes of this indwelling spirit. The quarters, that is the directions, the four directions are his ears. The revelation of the Vedas is his voice, so he speaks through the Vedas. The wind is his breath, the universe his heart. So this whole universe is the heart of that infinite being. And from his feet, the earth has originated, but bhyam, from his feet, the earth has originated. And so this is a poetic way of looking at the universe. And the way such statements as this were used in the Upanishadic and Vedic times was to meditate on the universe as this Purusha, so that everything was spiritualized. The sun and the moon are the eyes of that infinite spirit. The directions are his ears. The Vedas are the voice of that infinite spirit. The earth has come out of its feet. The whole universe is the heart of that infinite spirit. And so by meditating in this way, identifying everything in the universe with the infinite, one sought to spiritualize everything within the universe and everything within one's experience. So these were developed into what are called vidyas. In the Upanishads, there are 27 or 28, now I've forgotten, I used to know, but 27 or 28 vidyas, where there are this symbolic representation of the infinite reality. And so this is one such vidya. Then we come to verse 5, which says, Tasmadagni samidho yasya surya somaat parjanya oshadaya prithivyam puman retasinchati yoshitayam bahvi praja purushaat samprasutaha. So this continues this cosmology, and it talks about the process of how did we get all of these beings here, human and other beings. But speaking here particularly of human, but it refers to all living beings. So it says, from him comes the heavenly world, which is the first fire. So it doesn't, in the Sanskrit, it doesn't say first fire, but this is understood from other Vedic texts that the heavens were considered the first fire, the first Agni, having the sun for its fuel. So the sun in the heavens is the fuel of the first fire, which is the heavens. From the moon in the heavenly world, so the moon is also in the heavenly world, the rain clouds come, and the rain clouds, Parajanya, they were considered the second fire. So the first fire is the heavens themselves, where the sun is the fuel of the heavens. And then the moon, which also dwells in the heavens, from the moon come the second fire, which is the clouds, the rain clouds. And then from the clouds, the herbs on the earth, which are the third fire. So from the rain grow the plants. So now this should not be taken in a scientific sense, because if you try to, and that's true of any mythic story, and it's true of poetry. If you try to analyze poetry and make science out of it, then you lose the poetry. So this is identifying in a poetic way the process of creation. And so from the clouds, which are the second fire, coming from the moon, that was the ancient idea. The ancient idea, of course, was that the clouds actually are related to the moon. And then out of the clouds come the rain, which makes the herbs to grow. And so the herbs are the third fire. This is the Panchagni Vidya. the vidya, the meditation on the 5 fires. So there come the herbs on the earth. And from the herbs eaten, man, who is the 4th fire, casts seed in woman, the 5th fire. And so man is the 4th fire. And so man eats the herbs. It was considered in ancient times and the Vedic times that by eating the grains in particular, rice and barley, which were the main grains, rice the principal one and barley secondary, that from that semen is produced. And so man is the 4th fire, and the man sheds the semen into the woman, creating progeny, and woman is the 5th fire. So you start from the heavenly world, the 1st fire, then you have the moon producing the clouds from the heavenly world into the clouds, which is the 2nd fire. The clouds producing plants, and particularly grains, as the 3rd fire. The grains are eaten by man, who is the 4th fire, and man sheds semen into the woman, who is the 5th fire. And from that, all of these beings have come. So in this manner, many beings are born of the Purusha, the all-pervading being. That is, Bahvi Prajaha. Many offspring, Purushat Samprasuta, are born from the Purusha. Here the Purusha means the Supreme Purusha. So from that being who has the heavens as his head, then you get from that again the clouds and this whole progression down to the creation of living beings. So it's a poetic way of relating all beings to the infinite Purusha, seeing that that is the source. So in modern times, where we have scientific education, and there's no longer this idea that there was the ancient idea mentioned in the Upanishads, in the Chandogya Upanishad, for instance, that the souls of living beings go up into the clouds, and then they come down in rain and enter into plants, into grains. And then we eat them, and then they enter into us. So it was actually believed that the souls of departed people, they rise up into the rains, they fall, they enter into plants, and then they're eaten, and then they take form in the semen of men. So it was believed in a literal sense in ancient times, but we have to take it in a poetic sense. Again, whatever the belief was at that time, it was an attempt to see that everything here has come out of that infinite reality. And that principle remains true whether the science of it was mistaken or not. So then we come to verse 6, which continues this thought. And 6 says, Tasma'ad richasama yajumshi diksha yajñascha sarve kratavo dakshinascha samvatsarascha yajamanascha loka somo yatra pavate yatra suryaha. So this is continuing the process of creation. It says, Tasmat, from him, Richa Sama Yajumsi, have come the 3 Vedas. Remember, the Atharva Veda was accepted very late. For a long time, there were considered to be 3 principal Vedas: the Rig, the principal Veda, and then the Sama, and then the Yajur Veda. And the Atharva Veda was sort of a collection of all of the leftover pieces that didn't fit into the first 3. And so in time, that came to be accepted as a Veda too. So here, from out of him have come the 3 Vedas, the Vedic verses. And then the Diksha, the rules for performing sacrifice. Here it doesn't mean initiation. It means the rules for performing the sacrifices. The Diksha, Yajñascha, the Yajñas, the sacrifices, the fire sacrifices like the Agnihotra. And then the Yajñascha Sarve, all of the sacrifices. And then Sarve Kratava, all of the Kratus. Kratus were a particular class of sacrifices that included the Upastambha, the post that you tied the sacrificial animal to, the horse or the cow, So Swami Vivekananda said, and traced it historically, that the idea of the Shiva Lingam comes from the Upastamba, the sacrificial post to which the cow was tied. And that's why even now Shiva is associated with Nandi the bull which was tied to the Upastampa. The Kratus were those sacrifices which had a Upa, the pillar to which sacrifices were tied. Dakshinascha, and the dakshinas, the gifts that were made to the Brahmins as a result of the sacrifice. Samvatsarascha, the year itself came out of that supreme being. So the year was considered to be sacred itself. The year was sacred. And so we see that the conception of the year is that the days and the weeks and the months, they all have their sacred significance. And so the year itself is a sacred reality which has come out of that as part of time. Yajamanascha, the Samvatsara, here he interprets, and that's a good interpretation, it ties everything together. The Samvatsara, which means the year, here he says the time of the sacrifice, because it was the sacrifice was tied to the periods of the year, and so the time of the sacrifice. And then the Yajamana was the sacrificer. So the time of the sacrifice, and then the sacrificer, the Lokaha, the worlds, Somo Yatra Pavate Yatra Surya, the worlds which are purified by the sun and the moon. So the Chandraloka, the sun and the moon purify this world, the Bhuloka, and the Chandraloka is the world of the forebears, and the Surya Loka, the world of the gods. And so all of the three worlds are purified by the sun and the moon. So the running translation, from him are the Vedic verses, the sacred chants, the sacrificial formulae, the preliminary rites, the sacrifices, the ceremonies, sacrificial gifts, the time of the sacrifice, the sacrificer himself, and the worlds purified by the sun and the moon, which come to one as the fruits of sacrifice. So the conception was that the whole of the Vedic religion has come out of that reality. So remember that the purpose of all of this, even if nowadays it doesn't have direct application to our life in the details, the idea has direct application to us, and that is that everything has come out of that reality. Everything is sacred. Everything is a manifestation of that sacred reality. So then we come to 7, which continues the thought. Tasmat deva bahudha samprasuta sandhya sadhya manushya pashavo vayamsi pranapano bhavrihi yavo tapascha shraddha satyam brahmacharyam vidhischa. So this says that Tasmat deva, from him, the devas, the gods have come, the various orders of gods, like the Adityas and the Vishwadevas and the Rudras and the Vasus, etc. All of the different orders of gods have come from him. Some were born from him, some prasuta, sadhya, a class of celestial beings or divine beings have come from him also. Manushya, human beings have come from him. Pashava, beasts, the animals of the earth have come from him. Vayamsi, the birds have come from him. Pranapano, the breathing in and breathing out, which is necessary for life for all beasts, including human beings. Vrihi yavo, that's vrihi, which is rice, and the yava, which is barley. So rice and barley, the two main grains. Tapa, religious austerities have come out of him. Shraddha has come from him, truth has come from him, brahmacharya, the state of a celibate student, has come from him. Vidhi, the injunctions have come from him. All of these things were born from that reality. So again, finding that everything here has come from that. And verse 8, which says, Sapta prana prabhavanti tasmaat saptarchisha samidha sapta homaha sapta ime loka yeshu charanti prana hutashaya nihita sapta sapta. So from him to the seven senses in the head. Seven senses, we have five senses. No, the seven senses are the two eyes, the two nostrils, the two ears, and the mouth. So the seven are these, the seven senses in the head. So the sapta prana, the seven prana prabhavanti. These are the seven energies, the seven senses have come from him. The sapta archisha, the seven flames, that is the power to perceive. So the senses themselves are seven in number, but there's the power to perceive through the senses. The power to see, the power to hear, the power to smell, the power to hear. So it's not just the senses, but the power within the senses are seven as well. And then the sapta homa. So there's sapta homa are the oblations. Tasmat saptarchisha samhita. Oh, the samhita are the fuel, the seven fuels. That is the objects of the senses, which are offered into as sacrifice into the seven senses. And then sapta ime loka, the seven worlds. That is the seven realms of this realm of sight, this realm of hearing, this realm of smelling, tasting, and touching. These seven worlds, which are each distinct from each other, as I said before. Yeshu chalanti prana hutashaya nihita sapta sapta. So from him, the seven senses in the head, their powers of cognition, the objects which are experienced, the sense objects, the knowledge of them, the experience of them. So there's the object outside, but then there's the experience of the object as well. The seven seats of sense life, the seven worlds of experience of these, traversed by the life forces centered in the hearts of all beings, the life force which is centered here. So again, a way of seeing that everything is connected to that reality. Everything here is sacred. And then the ninth and last verse of this, oh no, there are 10 verses. So the ninth verse, let's see. I was just thinking, I'll save these two instead of just rushing through them. They continue the same idea, but it'll be a good place to start next time. So next time we'll start with verse 9. So again, the idea of all of these verses is to see in a poetic way that everything here is related to that infinite being. And that was a common way of seeing in Vedic times. One of my teachers, my Upa Guru, he used to tell me, I worked with him for some years at Mayavati. He used to tell me often that we have to recapture this principle of the Vedas, that way of seeing that everything that we experience is sacred. What happened in classical times in Hinduism is that the sacred was taken and put into images. And so the images were sacred. And yes, rivers continued to be sacred, and certain plants were sacred, and things like that. Certain actions were sacred, and all of that. But there was a tendency to put the sacred into the temple and into the image. So not that that is wrong. That also had its place and still has its place. But this teacher of mine used to say that we have to recapture the Vedic vision of seeing the divine in everything. And you find that Swami Vivekananda taught that over and over again. Seeing God in everything is the title of one of his lectures in Jnana Yoga. So Swamiji said, don't, in inspired talks, he says, don't seek God, just see him. That is, everything that we experience is that reality. So again, that was this teacher of mine, his way of saying it, that we have to recapture that Vedic vision of seeing everything directly as spirit. Swamiji said, Foolish is the man who, living on the bank of the Ganges, digs a well for water. There's a huge quantity of water is rushing past, and he digs a well. And so, such is the fool who, living in the presence of the visible, tangible, divine reality, goes to make an image in order to experience the reality. So again, there was nothing wrong with the image worship, and Swamiji himself started Durga Puja and so forth. But he didn't want us to end there. We should learn to see this, everything that we experience is sacred, and to see everything is sacred, to see everything is divine. So with that, I'll stop. I'll give announcements, and then if there are one or two questions, I will take those. So the announcements are on Thursday, we will have the class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna at the usual time, 11 o'clock in the morning. On Sunday, I will speak on the art and science of meditation at 11 o'clock, as usual. Next week, we will have the classes on this Upanishad, on the Gospel. And then not this weekend, but the following weekend, April 1st through 3rd, we have our big programs. On April 1st, Swami Sarvadevananda and Swami Atmarupananda will be arriving. Swami Sarvadevananda, the head of the Vedanta Society of Southern California, as well as the head of this center. Swami Atmarupananda, he's also the head of the Washington, D.C. Center, and under him, Swami Atmarupananda works as I work under Swami Sarvadevananda here. And so Swami Atmarupananda coming from D.C., Swami Sarvadevananda coming. They will arrive on Friday evening at 7 o'clock. 6:45 we have Arati, and 7 o'clock we'll have a talk by Swami Sarvadevananda, a satsang. Then on Saturday morning, he will give initiation to those who have requested initiation already. So no last-minute appearances. It has to be arranged ahead of time. So Swami Sarvadevananda will be giving initiation, and then the afternoon, Brahma Prana Mataji from our Dallas Center will be coming and joining us all here on Saturday. And so the three of them, Swami Sarvadevananda, Swami Atmarupananda, and Pravrajika Brahma Prana, they will be speaking at 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon on meditation, the importance of meditation. And then Sunday, we have our big program to which we hope many of you can come. That will be at our new retreat in Trinity. We've sent out a flyer with the address. If any of you are not on our mailing list and you want to come or just to know about it, let us know and we'll send you the flyer. But otherwise, if you're on the mailing list, you've received a flyer. The program starts in Trinity at the retreat at 11 o'clock in the morning, and we'll have a worship, followed by lunch, and then there'll be a description of the project at Trinity, what we're trying to do, what we hope to do in the future, God willing. And then a tour of the property. Then there'll be talks and singing and dance by some of our devotees. And so it will be a very nice program. We hope many of you will come. Some people have been concerned because when we had the inauguration, there were not bathroom facilities. There was just a old rented porta potty. But this time we have bathroom facilities, so people should not shy away from coming because they fear there won't be proper amenities. There will be amenities there, so please do come. And so those are the announcements. Yes. Now, what is that? Oh, I see. Is the number 7 considered sacred because of that? Perhaps. That who knows how the various sacred numbers came to be considered sacred. But 7 is often mentioned in the Vedas, and it's often used. In fact, they speak of the bull with 7 horns. And so people discuss what that might have symbolized. Of course, they knew, but then the symbolism was lost. And so people theorize, well, maybe the bull with 7 horns meant such and such. But the number 7 certainly was sacred. But why exactly? It was sacred before this verse. So, so is there ever a phase where only the absolute exists, not Saguna Brahman? Yes. In fact, from the standpoint of Brahman, Brahman only exists. Brahman alone exists. If we realize the Nirakara, the absolute Brahman, we find that there is nothing but Ekarasa, the one taste of the one non-dual reality. And so there's no question of Saguna Brahman. Saguna Brahman is Brahman in relationship to the universe. But if we transcend the universe, then there's no universe and there's no Saguna Brahman. That doesn't mean that Saguna Brahman is unreal. It means that Saguna Brahman is Nirguna Brahman when we're perceiving a universe. But when we've gone beyond the universe, then there's just Brahman. And so it's not that Saguna Brahman disappears, it's that we realize Saguna Brahman is just Brahman. Everything is just Brahman. So is this universe comprised of Satchidananda plus the poetic and playful mirage of separateness? Yes, that's a good way of putting it. So there are other ways of putting it, but this is a perfectly good way. And consistent with this is the Hindu idea of the play, the dance of Shiva, the dance of Kali, the play of Krishna, etc. That this whole universe is the play of the infinite within time and space. And so everything here is a manifestation of that reality. Another way in Vedanta, more philosophical way, what I just mentioned is not contrary to philosophy, but a more philosophical statement of the same thing is, everything here is Satchidananda plus name and form. Everything is Satchidananda plus name and form. That's all that there is to the universe, is Satchidananda plus name and form. Name being all of the ideas we have about something, and form being the sensory input of that thing. That's all that there is. So, has consciousness also come from him? Consciousness is him. Consciousness is the reality. And so our limited consciousness, yes, is a manifestation of that. So our limited consciousness is it. And the consciousness, what in the West and in Buddhism, where consciousness is similar to the Western conception, in Western thought and in Buddhism, what we call consciousness, which means conscious mental processes, yes, that has come from him. But consciousness as a reality, that is him. So, good. Well, thank you, and greetings to all of you who have sent greetings. Yes, Dhruva.
So I've heard you mention a few times when you're referring to Buddhism about how they don't have concepts of self and like ultimate reality and things like that. But in my own studies, where I mentioned a few times something called like the Great Light Void or something like that. How do those relate to this?
Yes, so the question for those of you who are online, the question is that I say often that in Buddhism they don't have the concept of self nor the self of the universe, and yet you find in texts like in certain Tibetan Buddhist texts the light, the clear light of the void. You find the idea of it's one part of the question, but it's the same thing, or the same idea as the question. You find them speaking of the dharma dhatu, the Buddha nature, the Buddha nature, the clear light of the void, and so forth. So how does that relate if they don't believe in a one reality, or in a reality, or in being, whatever? So yes, as I said tonight, Zen Buddhism, and actually Chan Buddhism in China, people nowadays know it as Zen, but it started as Chan in China and continues in China as Chan. That is the closest school to Vedanta of Buddhism, because they speak in more positive terms of reality. They speak of the Buddha nature within all beings, seeing the Buddha nature within all beings. And in certain schools of Tibetan Buddhism, the Nyingma, the Kagyu, the older schools of Tibetan Buddhism, they were influenced by Chinese Buddhism. So it's one of the strange paradoxes of history that the Buddhism which came from India to Tibet was more distant from Vedanta than the Buddhism which went to China and then from China into Tibet. And so the Dalai Lama school, the Gelugpas, they believe in an extreme form of shunyata, that there is no reality. The shunyata means emptiness, and even emptiness is itself empty. As emptiness is not a thing. It's not a reality. The emptiness itself is empty. Everything is empty. There's no thing. But the schools that were influenced at the earliest period of Tibetan Buddhism, they were influenced by this Chinese idea of the reality. And so the clear light of the void, which is taught in certain meditations, the Dzogchen meditation of Tibetan Buddhism, Dzogchen comes from Nyingma, the clear light of the void. That comes from Kagyu. They come from that period when those schools, which were influenced by Chinese Buddhism. And so there is a much closer parallel to Vedanta. Now, philosophically, they still have to say, well, no, we're not speaking of a reality. We're not speaking of a being. They will deny that. We're not speaking of a self. But you find that if you approach what they're saying experientially, it's easy to see that they're speaking of the same thing we're speaking of experientially. But philosophically, again, if you argue with them or you get them into an argument, then they'll say, no, we don't mean the same thing you do. Except some of these Tibetan Buddhists, not the Gelugpa school of the Dalai Lama, the dominant school in Tibet. And I'm not criticizing the Dalai Lama or the Gelugpas. The Dalai Lama I would certainly not criticize. He's a great soul. But their philosophy is quite different. But some of these followers of Nyingma and Kagyu Buddhism and Zen Buddhists, Chan Buddhists, it's much easier to have dialogue with them because they more quickly and easily see a experiential connection. So philosophically, they may disagree philosophically, but experientially, if you approach them, you find it's easier to find common ground. And there's even a Zen Buddhist teacher in this country, an American Zen teacher. I don't know his name, but he teaches Advaita Vedanta and Zen Buddhism. He's a Zen Buddhist, but he has recognized that Advaita Vedanta and Zen are speaking of the same thing, so he teaches them together. So, with that, we will close. I'll give a closing prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. That infinite being is full, perfect, and complete. This relative universe is full, perfect, and complete. From out of the fullness of that infinite being, the fullness of this universe has come, and yet that being remains ever the same. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all the beings of the universe.